Welcome in this edition of Inside. I'm Anurag Punitha with you. As we all know that the Pakistan is fomenting terrorism in India, and we all have been claiming it, and has been sending people with arms in this part, and I mean India. And Pakistan has been in a perpetual denial and have given the reason of all the misdeeds of these rogue elements as the foreign state actors. But in the recent weeks, or we call it a month, there has been a sudden change in Pakistan's attitude, what we can call a sudden epiphany or the change of the heart on the part of the Pakistan. As we know that after surgical strike by India, there have been a sudden increase of sabre rattling from both sides of the border, infiltrations, sudden increase of unrest in Kashmir Valley, attacks on Indian security forces camps. But after General Bajwa's taking over as the chief of the Pakistan Army, there is a change in attitude, it seems. First, there is a considerable decline in cross-border firing. Pakistan Army is taking on terrorists and killing them, as we are being told. Both in Pakistan and in Afghanistan, they have done their surgical strikes in Afghanistan to kill these terrorists. Hafiz Saeed has been put under house arrest, and Pakistan Foreign Minister has said that he is a threat to the country. Now, Pakistan's former National Security Advisor, Muhammad Ali Durrani, admitted that 26/11, that means Mumbai attack, was carried out by a terror group based in Pakistan and called it a classic example of cross-border terror. He said that I hate to admit that the 26/11 Mumbai attack carried out by terror group based in Pakistan on November 26, 2008, and is a classic trans-border terrorist. Mr. Durrani was the NSA when Mumbai attack happened. Along with this admission, there comes a news also about the former ISI chief, General Shuja Pasha's admission at that point of time of the involvement of the Pakistani-based groups in Mumbai in front of the CIA officials. It was revealed by the former Pakistani ambassador to US, Mr. Hussain Haqqani, in his book. So what it all signifies to India? Is it because of India's tough posturing in recent months these revelations have come, or will these acceptance change the dynamics of the Indo-Pakistan relation? What India should be doing? To discuss this in this program, I'm being joined by three guests, and we are asking a few questions as well. I've been joined by Mr. Shashank, former Secretary, MEA, Minister of External Affairs. Welcome in the show, sir. Sushant Sareen is Senior Research Fellow, Vivekanand International Foundation. Welcome, Sushant. And I've been joined by Lieutenant General Gurmeet Singh, Defence Analyst and former Deputy Chief of the Indian Army. Welcome in the show, sir. And I told you that we are asking a few questions to the panelists. That we are asking the original question: why the sudden epiphany, or will it change the dynamics of India? India's tough stand has yielded some results or not? Or Durrani's revelation strengthens India's case against Hafiz Saeed? Is it really a change of heart or an eyewash? What role India can play now to push Pakistan further to stop terrorism? Has acceptance shown the chinks in the Pakistan Army's armor, or the civilian-military divide in Pakistan? Mr. Shashank, I will be starting with you. How do you see this revelation, sudden acceptance, or what Pakistan has been perpetually denying so far? How do you see these sort of acceptance?
No, on the one hand, we should see it as a reiteration of that there are some non-state actors in Pakistan who roam around quite freely, canvass their causes very freely, raise funds, get signal support, get all kinds of training, etc. And then they are able to mount whether sea-based or whether land-based or whatever campaigns. And sometimes there were also rumors that there were some paratroopers also who were trying to drop from the skies.
Okay.
So therefore, there are these reiterations by the Pakistani officials that state is not involved at all. Pakistani institutions are not involved. They are all very honest, normal kind of institutions, and it's only the non-state actors who at one time perhaps were trained because they wanted to sort out Kashmir issue.
Okay.
And they wanted to raise the verbal decibel in order to get the international attention and pressure on India to resolve the Kashmir issue on the lines of whatever Pakistan wanted. On the other hand, we would say that yes, internally what is happening in Pakistan is that it's not, ISI is not the only state player in the game. ISIS or Daesh have started coming in. TTP or many other
Okay.
Islamist organization, they have joined hands. Even LET, Jamaat Dawa also, they seem to be getting closer and closer to Daesh. And therefore, it is really a free-for-all now. What Pakistani government was trying to convince us that it was a free-for-all earlier, it is becoming a really free-for-all, and Pakistani state is now trying to use all its military power to kill these people, even going to the extent of violating the sovereignty of Afghanistan and bombing, carrying out bombing raids
That's right.
in a neighboring country, which they have been always telling us that India should not violate the ceasefire line or anything like this, and they should just carry on their bilateral dialogue, and terrorism and dialogue should go together. That is what the solution given to us in the past. So that is one internal development. External is, yes, continued Indian pressure on Pakistan and the Americas and the international situation changing to such an extent that even an organization like NATO is now considered a failure. And President Trump has said that we have to find new solutions. Of course, he talked about getting help of Russia, but that is another context. But he can at least get the help more easily without involving his own domestic opposition of the Asian countries. So I think that is the other point. I would say that maybe there are people in Pakistan who feel encouraged to mount some pressure and get some support from the neighboring countries, whether it is on the diplomatic level, whether it's on the NGO level, and to see how they can mount pressure on both their own government as well as on the Daesh representatives in Pakistan.
Okay, General Gurpreet, how do you see this development? I mean, in terms of the acceptance level of the high-level Pakistani former officials in the role of these non-state actors in the Mumbai attack. How do you see the sudden change of heart or some genuine effort by the Pakistani side?
It's not a sudden change of thoughts or of the environment. I would say it is the interplay of so many factors within the environment, wherein we have seen that then NSA, when this Mumbai attack had happened, has shown a courage or attempt to come into India and in front of an Indian defense-oriented think tank to say the things that he is told. Categorically, he has admitted that it was a Pakistani terror group which had conducted the attack, one. Secondly, he's also shown that Hafiz Shahid is of no use. And they should take some action against him. I think this coming from a person who's been in the seat of decision and the policy at that moment is an important aspect for us. To me, analytically, I look at it that there is a constituency of intellectuals, there's a policy decision of those people who contributed to the entire coming in of the terrorism as a state tool, as a strategic asset of Pakistan. There is a rethink in that and all. This is how the environment is getting shaped from within. I would definitely like to compliment constant pressure as an Indian state that we've been putting, whether it is in the area of the investigation or diplomatically. I think it is good. It is showing results and we should continue it on that area. At the same time, I would say that is it a isolated voice or it has got others also behind this process, or is the thought changing? Somewhere one feels that we have to contribute in shaping the environment in Pakistan where they're assisted to drop this terrorism as a state policy. It's not easy, but yes, there is a start somewhere, there's a spark somewhere, and that's what we got to analyze and work on that from that point of view.
Okay, Shashank, how do you see it? I mean, you take on about, and why on earth suddenly 2 or 3 Pakistani former officials put their heads on the block and by accepting the fact? Because I was going through the Pakistani media and there are some uneasiness amongst them and some establishment also that, okay, why on earth he went to India and then accepted it. How do you see it?
See, I am afraid I disagree with both my distinguished colleagues.
Okay.
I don't think there's any change. Mahmood Ali Durrani, this is not the first time he has admitted that this attack had taken place from Pakistan. Even in fact, while he was a serving NSA, he had admitted it. And throughout the last 8 years, he has said it on a number of occasions, including on some of the talks he has come and delivered at the IDSA and other places out here. So there's no new earth-shaking revelation that he has made that we suddenly seem to have come alive to, number one. Number two, Hussein Haqqani, the former ambassador to the US, has in his books written about what Shuja Pasha said at that point of time. I don't agree with this fiction of non-state actors in Pakistan. There are no non-state actors in Pakistan, especially not the guys who are operating against India. They work with the sanction of the Pakistani military, with the complete connivance and complicity of the Pakistan military. Otherwise, you cannot have anybody. General Gurmeet Singh has led the corps, apparently, so you were also the corps commander. Ask him, can anybody go from the Indian border, cross over without anybody?
With any support or
it's just
direct
not
or indirect
possible.
support, it's
So,
not possible.
that's a work of fiction. See, people like Mr. Durrani and all come out here to soften our opinion. They hold absolutely no weight in Pakistan. Nobody listens to them. They are useful idiots who are sent across the border to India so that they soften the public opinion out here, where people are desperate to get back into talks with Pakistan. So I think it's the kind of tactic which has been used so often in the past.
That's
that
right.
I don't know why we want to get impressed by it. Let me just join issue on a couple of other things with you and what you said right in the beginning. Hafiz Saeed's house arrest, what does it mean? It means nothing. See, just 2 days back, from a guy who's house arrest, who's an internationally designated terrorist, he's speaking to the rest of the world. What kind of a house arrest is that? He's speaking to Asia Andrabi, he is exciting crowds, he is addressing people. It's a sham of a house arrest, number one. Number two, the Indian Foreign Office also got pretty excited that his name has been put under the 4th schedule of the Anti-Terrorist Act in Pakistan.
Right.
It's so much of nonsense. There are 8,000 people whose names are there in the 4th schedule of the Anti-Terrorist Act. Most of them are notorious terrorists who continue to roam around, continue to hold political rallies, all sorts of things they are doing. This is the kind of eyewash that the Pakistanis have become past masters in doing, and we tend to fool ourselves every time. Oh, General Bajwa has come, this is a nice guy, something is going to change. Nothing has changed. So I want to know what has actually changed on the ground. Have the incidents of terrorism in Kashmir stopped? Has the infiltration stopped? Has the poisonous propaganda stopped? Now, we are latching on to one 3 or 4 word phrase which was used by the defense minister, which is a misnomer, because the defense minister in Pakistan can't even enter the general headquarters without the permission of the army. So he is worth nothing to nobody, right? The actual defense minister, if at all there is one thing, is the defense secretary, who is a former army officer. But the defense minister you have to see the setting where he is. He is in Munich. He is asked a question where all the foreign ministers and defense ministers out there are talking about terrorism and of Islamist terrorism out there. Out there, if this guy Khwaja Asif is going to say that no, Hafiz Saeed is a philanthropist, he's the Mother Teresa of Pakistan, how do you think that would have been received? So he said what he had to say. But please see his statement 2 days back in the Pakistani parliament on India. So if we want to fool ourselves that they're actually going to be acting against these fellows, we've done it 70 years in the past, we can do it for as long as we want to, or we can wake up to the reality of Pakistan and start doing something about that.
How will you react, Ms. Shashank? I mean, very candid and very naked truth about why should be pleased about the kind of revelation that he has done, or the couple of the people in Pakistan is doing it. We should not be very cagey, very cautious on the part of these people, what they are doing it.
No, I started with exactly the same formulation which Sushant has given. What I have said also, that there are some changes which we can as analysts note. And see whether Pakistan can be helped to move in a certain direction away from whatever it has been doing for the last 70 years. So Shant feels that it will not help. While I agree 60-70% with that kind of a scenario building, but I also feel that there is no harm if so long as you can take sufficient precautions and you take your other neighbors along with you. Whether Afghanistan or Bangladesh or others, those who have been suffering under terrorism sent out from Pakistan. So we move along with them, and then we try to see whether there is a new kind of a international awareness under the Trump administration and under the Chinese thought of putting $54 billion in Pakistan at the mercy of these kind of people who have been playing ball with the terrorists. So will that help the Chinese? I mean, I remember the Chinese had signed an agreement with the Taliban government in Afghanistan saying that don't disturb the peace in China, but you can go around doing whatever you like elsewhere. Chinese would like to continue with that kind of an approach in future also, or would they now like to change? Because they are also being watched, after all, whatever they are doing in South China Sea and trying to put pressure on their other neighbors in Asia. So therefore, there is a likelihood that Asia might like to work together in a way that if President Trump feels that NATO is useless, the European allies have their own problems, and perhaps he needs to find bilateral partners or other partners in Asia to find solutions to Asian problems. And secondly, we must also see that there is an immediate requirement for the Americans and the Westerners and even the Russians to attack the ISIS in Iraq and Syria. Where would they run? First
Probably
to Afghanistan. And then in Pakistan. In Pakistan, they have already started attacking various Sufi shrines and various Shia groups. Pakistan may not mind it because they know that in any case they depend only on this kind of a situation. They get more money from outside, the more destabilized they are. So would they like to continue with that kind of a scenario? So I'm only saying that let us try to take a possibility that maybe, and we take only baby steps. I'm not saying that Prime Minister should immediately start talking to Nawaz Sharif to encourage democracy there.
But very cleverly or cunningly, they are, diverting the attention of the Indians by accepting the half-truth. They're accepting that these are the foreign state actors, but the Pakistani establishment, the government were not involved in that. So these are, don't you believe that this is the half-truth?
No, I agree. But how do you expect Pakistani state to go around saying that yes, our ISI is a rogue organization, or it's an organization controlled by the Chief of Army Staff and by the Prime Minister, and they both agree, or the Prime Minister sleeps when these briefing meetings take place. As Musharraf had earlier said, that Prime Minister was present, but as he was sleeping through all these things when we decided on Kargil operation. So I think the same thing must have happened once again, and this keeps on happening. What I am saying is that yes, ISI there are rogue people there. They need to be identified and neutralized. If this is a setup done under the instruction of the Chief of Army Staff, which is also very likely, then Chief of Army Staff has to be told that this will not go on in future. Please change it. Otherwise, all of you are going to be on the blacklist permanently, and all their investments in America and their children is going there, studying there, working there, they would all come into serious problems. And I think the Pakistanis also know that ultimately they would not like to lose the visa of America.
You were saying something, Shant, and my question is also about General Bajwa's role as a chief of the Pakistani Army Staff. Has he changed something? I mean, he's saying that he's taking on the terrorists in Pakistan and Afghanistan. How do you see that?
No, see that since the time of Musharraf, even when Musharraf was chief, they continued to talk about the internal threat is much more, much more onerous than the external threat. Successive chiefs have said that, so no new statement out there. Well, maybe in style, he seems to have a less abrasive style, but let us for a moment imagine that he is also, he's not the kind of bloody-minded fellow which his predecessor was. Will he be able to change the ethos of the Pakistan army in the time he has? I have serious doubts on that score. That is one point. The second point is, I don't see any reason why we should get enthused by a couple of people in Pakistan who write columns advising their own government to show some sense. Right? And Mr. Shashank obviously has far more experience of Pakistan. He served out there as well. He knows it, that even in the 70s and 80s, there were people like this who used to be trying to talk sense to the Pakistani establishment. It didn't make a single bit of difference to the strategic calculus of the Pakistani establishment. So why do we assume that people who talk sense to the Pakistani establishment today is going to make any difference? I'm afraid it's not going to make difference. The other thing is about this whole IS business. I think we need to look at this very carefully, because what is happening in Pakistan from the IS, or many of the groups which claim to be part of the IS today, are nothing but homegrown Pakistani terrorist groups. These are homegrown sectarian groups which have already been doing what they've been doing. They've just changed the label. The brand name is different now. So it might be the Lashkar-e-Jhangvi, but when they mount an attack in Sevan Sharif, they take on the brand name of the IS. So, you know, it gives the attack a lot more notoriety. It gives it a far greater kind of eyeballs around the world. And then the Pakistanis can leverage that to actually seek support from the rest of the world. So, you know, it works well for them. So I would be extremely careful in looking at this whole IS business in Pakistan. Pakistan has done what countries like Turkey did as far as IS is concerned. Turkey, for example, turned a blind eye to the IS because they thought, okay, here is this group which will, you know, kill some of the guys we don't like inside Syria, and, you know, it'll give us a leg up in the war on that. Pakistan's calculation is somewhat similar. So here are these guys inside Afghanistan. Because they are in Afghanistan, we can now try and seek the support of and the Russians and the Chinese are getting fooled by it. Even some Americans are getting fooled by it, that the Taliban, imagine, what's the difference between the Taliban and the IS? What does the IS do which the Taliban have not done? The IS is postmodern in its brutality. The Taliban are medieval in their brutality and their outlook. Otherwise, what's the difference between them? They're as savage and barbaric as each other. So to say that now the Taliban are going to be the bulwark against the IS is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. But that is what is the Pakistani line. So they are trying to gain respectability for the Taliban in Afghanistan by waving this IS threat. It's a different matter that these kind of silly calculations the Pakistanis make always rebound on them, and this will again rebound on them. But I think we need to be extremely careful when we talk about the IS in this whole region and the expanding footprint and all of that. These are mostly homegrown fellows who've just taken on a different brand name now.
Okay, General Gurmeet, how do you see that? I mean, my question about that General Bajwa's role as a chief of the Pakistan Army Staff, is he something different or similar same? Will he able to change the ethos of the Pakistan armies, or India hated the mindset over there?
I think it is too early to give an analysis on the positive aspect of it. Because I think we got to see credible changes on the ground. And I totally agree with Mr. Sushant. It's a very realistic and absolute view on the point that we should not get excited with these small inputs and all. We have a habit of trying to take out a big deduction out of a small input. I think we need to be cautious, because unless we see the effect on the ground, we see a effect of the change of the policy on the ground, it is very difficult to this thing. I would also like to say that I think we need to watch a little more intensely in case the changes are coming or not. At the moment, there are no changes. There is no change in the funding pattern, in the recruitment, in the terrorist group which is there, or any activity which is there. In fact, there still seems to be focus on this. Maybe they're trying to show that the little cooling off, but we get no evidence of its implementation on the ground, because there's no effect of change of the direction which they'd taken earlier. To me, some of the aspects which are important are, I don't give any credence to this word as a non-state actor. In fact, non-state actor, it may be in the qualification of it, but once you get your funding, once you get the support, infrastructure support, abetment, then there's nothing known as a non-state this thing. It's only that it is not declared, but it is a very part and parcel of the state policy which they got. In fact, to me, what is important is one aspect from this former NSA's admission is that the truth can never be hidden. It can never be kept under the carpet. I think that is what is important from this. In fact, the entire gambit of terrorism, which Pakistan has been using since long time, has been webbed around a state of denial. It has been how they've been, as a propaganda, as a web of lies which they've been doing. What I would like to invest on is that the chunk in that state of denial started appearing. When this Pak NSA in 2009, he confessed, or he admitted that Kasab actually belonged to Pakistan. That was the first time he came up, and he was sacked because of that. Now he's come to this level. Maybe the third level, he and other of his genre would be making the thing louder. I agree that at the moment there is no change on the ground. In fact, the whole threat of terrorism is actually enhancing with the IS, Daesh and others coming in. But what is important to us is We are looking for a solution from our point of view. And solution is our preparedness to take on this this scourge of terrorism. In fact, I would say that we should take benefit of this changing global environment, which has been on since quite some time, which are defining towards more specific steps toward the counterterrorism, and we should be able to take advantage of it. But one thing is definite, that we should not let the event just slip by. I would say that we should invest, we should broaden this park. In fact, you don't know in what way it will end up. Because actually, I have been to Pakistan twice as a part of military delegation. In fact, there are many voices which is against the state.
Okay.
I personally feel it is not a participative thought as a Pakistan to do the thing and all, but as a state policy, and they've been indulging into terrorism and all, and it's a threat to us. And I think it is it is imperative for us that our national security it is strengthened in this against the terrorism. So therefore, I would say that we should not neglect it. We should invest upon it. At the same time, it doesn't interfere into our preparedness and our steps that we got to take as a nation against the terrorism.
Short comment from you, Sushant, that Pakistan has been successfully able to create this terminology of the state actor, non-state actors, or the good terrorist or the bad terrorist. Has it benefited them?
It hasn't, because you see what they are doing is that they've tried to do it, and they thought that they can distinguish between the good and the bad. But you know, as something which Mr. Shashank also said, many of the fellows who were supposedly the good terrorists very often tend to go and join ranks with the bad terrorists. So, for example, Mr. Shashank alluded to that fact. That some of the LET fellows have actually made a beeline because they have an ideological connect with the Daesh. So many of them have, you know, actually changed their loyalties from the LET and gone and switched over to the Daesh. So that kind of a thing has also been happening. A lot of the terrorists who were very active at one point of time, both in Afghanistan as well as in India, went on to become part of the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, went on to make common cause with the Al-Qaeda. Many of the same fellows now, actually it's a next generation now, which now comprise the so-called ranks of the Islamic State in Khorasan. So all of that is part of this silly game which they keep playing with. This guy is a good fellow, this guy is a bad fellow, but the good fellow turns into a bad fellow tomorrow. You know, because he is so ideologically committed, he's been so heavily indoctrinated that it doesn't take much for him to snap.
But what about the posturing? What about the posturing of the Pakistani army or establishment that they are taking on the Pakistan, these rogue elements, the terrorists, and they are killing them? They are doing some operation in that part of the land, and they are also the victim of the terrorism.
See, I think it's the former ISI chief Asad Durrani who said that's collateral damage when they become victim, because when there is this larger strategic cause that the Pakistan army is infused with, then you know, these small battles to try and get firmer control over these fellows, like you say, these are rogue terrorists. So, but they're terrorists nevertheless, but these are rogue because as long as they were working with the state, they were working like auxiliaries of the state. But now, because they're not working in conjunction with the state, they become rogue. That's the whole. Otherwise, all terrorists would be rogue, right?
Yeah, but they conveniently turned these terminology from mujahideen to militant to now the bad terrorist to good terrorist. I mean, as per their...
See, that is something that is not necessarily what they have turned around. That is the way the terminology keeps shifting. Because look, for example, look at us. Yesterday there was an incident. We had police officers saying that these are misguided youth. Now, misguided youth taking a pistol or an AK-47 and firing at policemen, my dictionary, he's a terrorist. But some police officer in UP thinks he's a misguided youth. I think it's crazy, but what can you say? So, what do you do about these kind of people? You know, you use these silly terminologies. What is the difference between a militant and a terrorist?
Okay.
Right? But you use the word militant, which is a little less... in terms of negativity, is a little less than a terrorist. But why do we use the term militant for somebody who attacks the Indian state with the force of arms, who wages war against India? We tend to call him a militant, not a terrorist. So I think even we are muddled in our heads on the kind of terminologies we should use.
Okay, on this note, we are going to take a short break, and we come back, then we would be asking the question about what India should be doing and why we should be happy about this sort of revelation by the few former high-level diplomats in Pakistan. After the short break, we will be discussing this. Welcome back. In this edition of Insight, we were discussing before going to the break that Pakistan former National Security Advisor's admissions about the involvement of the Pakistani non-state actors, Pakistani people in Mumbai attack at that point of time, and what impact it could have on Indo-Pakistan relations. Shashank sir, there is an impression that Pakistan is under pressure to come to the table for the talks. But my question is that is India will also come under the pressure after this revelation? Eventually, let's say the countries like US and other European countries will put the pressure on India to come to terms for the talks.
No, let us go step by step. Our first priority has to be to protect the Indian state from terrorist attacks. And we are, as we see in the last few days, there were attacks mounted by the ISI with their cells in Nepal to utilize Hindu fellows to derail Indian trains.
That's right.
And some of them caused heavy casualties. Second is this operation in Lucknow, where whatever misguided youth or the hardcore fellows who have been totally influenced by the Daesh. And not only that, I think the Chief Minister of Madhya Pradesh said that they were also sending some of the information about the bomb which they placed in the train to their handlers in Syria. So which means that they are hardcore fellows, well trained, well motivated. So you are under attack from these two kind of organizations. ISI on its own by using its cells in different parts of South Asia. Secondly, ISI trying to encourage Daesh to move towards Afghanistan or towards other countries like Bangladesh, India, or the states of India which are willing to welcome them. And I have Kerala and West Bengal very much in mind, apart from Kashmir. Second step would come, how do we take care of India and South Asia's interests in a situation where on one hand, Daesh is trying to set up this organization of Khorasan, and China is trying to put every country in Asia, especially in South Asia, under pressure. We have just tried to get into the SCO by saying that India is very keen on dealing with terrorism issues in South Asia and also attached in Central Asia. So we have to find some initiatives to deal with these subjects. First of all, to deal with the SCO, because that is meeting which is coming up right in front as to what kind of initiatives we can take there. Third would be when the new US president is trying to work out a new strategy to deal with terrorism, and it is coming closer to India. So India must come up with some idea and not depend only on the universities in the West to come out with the solutions. And so we have to find our own narrative which we should be able to convey. So that is our other priority. Finally, we come to the issue, do we take Pakistan seriously or not? And these signals, which are being said to mobilize public opinion in India and people who are already convinced that Pakistan is a good player and we need to work well with them. Because within India we have different communities living together, and leftists have always felt that unless we appease the religious minorities, we will not be able to have peace in the country.
But the situation has been in the past that we get into this trap of Pakistan by accepting or by taking some steps. Do you believe that what role should India play?
Those are mistakes which are made because we were coming under pressure from the West to give some concessions to Pakistan. So we agreed to say that all right, terrorism and dialogue can go together. We also agreed that yes, in Balochistan there was some incident of terrorism, etc. where Pakistani state was fighting. But they were all terrorists who have been created by Pakistan state. So therefore, we need to be very clear in our mind, in our dialogue with the Western countries or with China, Russia, everywhere else, that we have to first protect our state. Secondly, we have to make sure that we come up with alternative sets of countries, whether it is the West or whether it is the Chinese or Russians and others, Central Asian countries or Afghanistan, and we build those coalitions to curb terrorism in this region.
Okay.
Thirdly, we can come and see how the Western countries are trying to fight the issues and whether Pakistan can be co-opted in that in some way, whether India can come up with some initiatives in that, and whether dialogue has to be started.
Okay.
That all comes towards the very end of the whole picture.
Okay. General Gurmeet, how do you see the role of the Indian government in recent months in the Kashmir Valley, the unrest in the Kashmir Valley? The kind of message has been given to the army, and the way the army handled this entire situation, the security forces. Do you find that the change in the attitude of the government or something similar, especially the central government?
When I look at the our state of I say counter-terrorism narrative or these aspects and all. I personally feel that there is no change on the situation on the ground. Only thing is that the challenge has become even more intense and all in the valley and overall when I look at the entire perspective. When I look at the statement of the former Pak NSA and try to analyze out of it, what does it, how does it affect us and all? I would say that what he stated is obvious. This we knew about it all this time. That Pakistan has been sponsoring this terrorism in our country. But what is important is that we have to be prepared. We have to ensure that we got a clear long-term narrative for ourselves, and we got a long-term policy for ourselves how to counter an entire aspect. But on ground, there is no change from Pakistan as far as terrorism is concerned.
Okay.
There is no visible or there is no input to say that the terrorist network has changed, recruitment has changed, finances or abetment which has been going on has changed.
They don't want to change it, or they are not being able to change it because these state actors or non-state actors have gone out of their hand?
I would put it this way, that even if they want to change, they want to drop this card of terror as a state policy or as a strategic option. What is the compulsion on them? How do they change from within or from the outside and all?
Okay.
In fact, when you look at from the outside, from the international global pressures and all, they've been there on since long time. In fact, the entire globe has been victim to the acts of terrorism all around. But Pakistan as the center of gravity from where the whole thing is sprouting, it has got to change. So what is the compulsion from the outside, inside, or from the people who are affected like India? We got to create the environment that they change. In fact, from this statement, I pick up few words that he said, I hate to admit.
I hate to admit, yeah.
There is a deep guilt in the mind of the Pakistani planners, decision makers. In fact, when you look at Durrani, he's not only a former journal, he's been an ambassador, he was in the important position of an NSA.
Right.
In fact, this guilt is indicating that all these people who've been planning the entire thing, they come to this point that they're accepting the mistake. Another important aspect was that he said Hafiz Saeed has got no use, and I hope he's punished. I think what we got to do is we got to invest from this admission and create that environment for the Pakistan state to drop this card. In fact, I would also go to the extent of saying that the separatists or the inimical elements who are there in the valley, they must pick up a lesson out of it. That those people within Pakistan, their thought, their perception, their belief is changing. They are having, they started suspecting the very edifice on which they base terrorism as a state tool for themselves and all.
Okay.
Although these things do take time, we should not jump to the conclusion. But I would say that we should by no chance let this event just go by.
Okay.
We should invest onto this. In fact, I think it is very important that in the cognitive space or shaping the environment of public opinion or the decision maker in Pakistan, we must calibrate or assist in cultivating environment where in the long term they change. In short term, they are not going to change. There is no indication. And in fact, that's why it is important for us that we should be steadfast on a very clear narrative, which is long term, so that we are able to affect this counter-terrorism to our requirement as a national security.
Okay. Shashank, is this an opportunity on the part of India to put more pressure on Pakistan of this acceptance level? And what I asked Mr. Shashank about that, will India eventually be under the pressure from the Western countries or America to come to terms to talk with Pakistan after this revelations?
See, pressure from somewhere else is what you take. What you don't take is not pressure. Now, I don't see how a country like India, you know, we have pretensions, even if it's not real, of being an emerging superpower, right? It's not going to happen, at least in my lifetime, but we have pretensions. So if we have those pretensions, how is it that a country like India succumbs to some kind of a nudge or a push from some of these Western countries, but a country like Pakistan, which is a basket case, right, which has a bad name, passport which is just next to Somalia in birth, a country like that is able to resist 15 years of pressure from the Americans, from the Europeans, from NATO and what have you. How is that happening, right? My point is that I don't see any reason why we need to take that pressure, number one. There is always a pushback. So if supposing somebody tells us, please do this, we can tell him, Ke, Janab, we will do it, but can you please ask these fellows to do these 2-3 things? What stops us from saying that? Number one. So pressure is, I think we can ward it off. The second thing is that in the current climate, I don't think there is going to be the kind of pressure which used to be there in the past, right?
On India?
I don't think so. It's going to be there. Who is going to pressurize you? And any of those countries which start pressurizing you or trying to nudge you into doing something, you can always do a lot of pushback on them on what they are doing. So, for example, if the Americans are to tell us something, we can say, why don't you talk to the Iranians? You know, that's the nice thing to do because that will.
But what you are talking about, that it should happen, but will it happen eventually?
No, I hope it happens, because if we have a government which is assertive, which is able to assert its position, then I see no reason why
we have had the governments in the past, but we came in.
But see, we've known what the kind of governments we've had in the past. When we've had good governments like Mrs. Gandhi in the past, she resisted the pressure which was coming from the Americans and from everybody else to the extent it was possible, right?
But you eventually agree that the pressure will come eventually.
No, even if it comes, there are ways and means. Look, we are not a Maldives or a small country which is dependent on other people. You know, either you say that you are a emerging power, or you say that you are a nobody and that anybody can kick you around and push you around. So I think that much of self-respect we need to inculcate in ourselves on how to resist this. The other thing is that as far as Pakistan is concerned, my advice to whoever would take it is that don't get fooled by the cosmetics of what the Pakistanis are doing. We must have a set of metrics on the basis of which we will judge whether the Pakistanis are actually delivering on the ground or not. So, for example, Jaish-e-Mohammed, the Pakistanis are leaning upon the Chinese that you please veto this proposal. Let us see if the Pakistanis lift their thing and they say, okay, fine, we have no objections to Jaish-e-Mohammed being booked as or Masood Azhar being booked as an international terrorist. After all, Jaish-e-Mohammed is listed as an international terrorist organization. So that could be one metric. The other metric, another metric could be, okay, Hafiz Saeed is too big, but how about an encounter in which Zakiur Rahman Lakhvi is bumped off? The Pakistanis do it all the time. They're past masters in these encounters. Do you know over 4,000 people have been killed in the last 2 years in Karachi itself? There is no report, there is no inquest, there is nothing of the sort. You just randomly go and kill anybody, say he's a terrorist, and they go and kill him.
So the Pakistani establishment can bump off anybody?
Of course they are doing it. They are doing it as we are speaking. So I would say that these would be certain metrics on the basis I would judge that yes, they are serious in what they are signaling. Right? Otherwise, it's happened so many times in the past. I don't see any reason why we should fool ourselves that they have put the ATA on Hafiz Saeed. We welcome this step. What does it mean? Has anybody analyzed what does putting him in ATA mean? How does it stop his activities? What has been done? He's still communicating with terrorists in Kashmir. He's still guiding his people. So how does the ATA, his being booked under ATA, make any difference to us?
Mr. Shashank, do you see these revelations as a chink in the Pakistani's armor in terms that there is a divide, the clear divide within the civilian government and the military establishment in the Pakistan? At the time of the attack on the Indian security forces in Kashmir, and when we did the surgical strike, there were reports in the Pakistani newspaper about the discontent in the civilian government, that either you should mend your ways, otherwise you will face the isolation. Do you see that these fissures are increasing?
Well, we will come to know very soon. When Mr. Durrani goes back, does he meet the same fate as Salman Taseer, who was the governor of Punjab, who was trying to be very liberal? And now, even now, they can't hold a condolence meeting for him. So the point is that you can take on a person like Hafiz Saeed and put him in some list. But if you speak more seriously against him, then there are any number of people in Lahore or in Pakistan who would be quite willing to bump off. So it's not just the Pakistani state which kills off people. There are others also in Pakistan.
But do you believe that he has not been picked up by the Pakistani establishment, the Pakistani ISI or Pakistani army to go to India and to go to US and made these revelations about that, or they are doing it on their own?
No, if they can appoint him somewhere back to as NSA, then we will say yes, they have briefed him. But they removed him last time. And so they allowed him very much to be on his own. And now, as you yourself said, that the Pakistani media is not very happy. They are confused as to why does this man go and talk like this. And he is considered to be a pro-West kind of person, generally. And so that was the Pakistani thing, that they can be pro-West to the extent that they are allowed to carry on their own little games in Afghanistan and India. And the Americans were quite willing to, and the British were quite willing to play along with that kind of a dialogue. But now it is not possible any longer, because Pakistanis have tried to kill the CIA guys present in Pakistan. They have killed some people right outside the CIA headquarters in Langley. Americans know all these things. They have not done it in the past. They knew very well when Abdul Qadir Khan was stealing all kinds of nuclear secrets from Holland. But they say he's our boy. Pakistanis are our boys. They are naughty boys. We can rap them on the knuckles from time to time, but they are our boys. Now that thing is changing. Obama wanted to withdraw from everywhere. Trump may continue that withdrawal, but at least he's not talking that language. So Pakistan has to see, if they feel that Americans will come and go away, then they will continue with their games. But if they feel that America will find partners either in the region or outside, and they will try to put a stop to these kind of games which Pakistan has been playing merrily, then I am sure that they will then start behaving more seriously.
So finally, in short comments, we should not take Pakistani very seriously on their face value. We have to be very cautious while dealing with them.
Absolutely. In fact, I would say that any admission of this nature or any event which happens out here, we should not jump to conclusion, but it should give us a lead on an analytical path. It should give us a task on the intelligence to start looking at the environment and start taking actions accordingly. Actually, I'm of this view that
time is short, so you can wrap it up.
I'm of this view that he has played with the hornet's nest of Pakistan basics of card of deniability and the propaganda of lies which is there. And everything that Pakistan had as far as terrorism as a tool was concerned can be disturbed if we invest on this, because it is from their own home this admission has come, and it is going to disturb equations out there. But we should not expect immediate results. We should be prepared with our own stead on the counter-terrorism as a country, as a nation.
Final comment, very short comment about the seeing the track record of the present central government. Do you see that the kind of posturing that India has done will continue, or will the Modi government relent on these?
Two things. Number one, anything the Pakistanis say, don't take it seriously. Take seriously what they do on the ground. Okay? And what they are doing on the ground is negative as of now. Number two, please make a policy on Pakistan which does not change with the change in season. So
Okay.
we have 4 different policies or approaches to Pakistan in a year. So every 3 months the season changes and we change our policy. Please form a policy which is going to be a consistent policy, which does leave wriggle room for the government, but it has to be a consistent policy. Otherwise, we will keep going round and round in circles as we've been doing in the last 70 years.
Okay, on this note, we have to wrap up this program. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for coming here and discussing this. So we have to be very cautious. There is a sense of content in the Indian establishment that, okay, the Pakistan has come to the conclusion that they have done something wrong, but these admissions have been done in the past as well, but the India has to trade very cautiously as far as the Pakistan is concerned. That's all we have in this edition of Inside. Thank you very much for watching us.